This video, we're going to go over the process of creating a template on the laser cutter so that we can center punch these holes and then drill them on the drill press. So we need to go into Fusion into our design because most of the work's already been done for us. We just got to make a couple of small changes. So I'm just going to change to Fusion. Here I have the 25-inch piece of RHS modeled that you did in the earlier exercises. If I look at its overall length, yes, it's 635.4. That's the correct length. What I want to do is I want to create a piece of MDF which is the same as this top profile and a piece that's the same as this side profile that we can then use to center punch the holes in the RHS. So the reason we center punch is to make the drill line up in the correct spot and not want to run. So we're going to make templates to center punch the holes. Now these holes in this design are all currently at 5mm. My center punch isn't 5mm thick, it's only 3mm thick, so I just have to do a quick change to this design so that all of these holes go down to 3mm. Now this is the beauty of parametric CAD, because you can simply go back to the sketch where you drew the hole and change its size, and that was this sketch here. So I can right click on this sketch in the timeline and choose edit, and that rewinds the timeline back in time, back to that point when we drew the hole. And if we're looking at that sketch, you can see that hole is 5mm. If I zoom in there, you can see a 5mm hole. I can simply double click on that dimension, type in 3mm, and press enter. That's made the hole smaller. As soon as I finish the sketch here, you'll see this timeline plays forward, and then all the holes on this side will be then 3mm. If I pull that back into 3D view, you can see my 5mm holes on top and the 3mm holes on the side. Now I also want to change these top ones to 3mm, so I need to find the sketch where I drew them, which is this sketch here. Right click on that sketch, edit, zoom in there and change that 5 to a 3, click finish, and it all plays through and updates. So that's as simple as the steps required to completely remodel that with 3mm holes. Now that I've got that modeled with 3mm holes, I want to get this side profile into a DXF file so I can take it to Adobe Illustrator. So the easiest way to do this is just add a clean sketch to this side and then project through the geometry. So I'm going to go add sketch, and then I want the sketch on this surface here, so I'm going to click that surface. Yours will naturally spin around like that. Now, I want to make sure all the geometry that's on that surface comes through to my sketch, so I'm going to do a project, which is under the Create menu down here, Project Include, and then P for Project. I never actually really know where this menu is, I just always use the shortcut. So I'm going to hit P, and it's saying, what do you want to project? I'm interested in projecting the sketch geometry. That's what this is about. If I choose this one, it would only give me the outline, but I want the geometry on this face here. And as I hover over that, you can see everything going red. That's what it's going to project. So I could project in every individual little circle like this, or if I just hover over it somewhere on the blank face, I get to project the whole face onto that sketch. So if I click there, it's now saying I have one face selected, and then I can click OK. And that's created a sketch with all of the geometry of that side onto it. I'm going to pull that back into 3D view, and I'm going to finish that sketch. Now you'll see in my sketch collections, this was my first sketch that gave me the profile of the piece. That was the hole in the side, that was the hole on the top, and that's the sketch that I just created. I like to name these sketches just because they get a bit confusing after a while, after you get a few of them. DXF export side. Right, now I need to save that into a format that the Adobe Illustrator software can import so that we can cut this on the laser printer. And to do that, I right click on DXF, the sketch that I've just created, and choose Export DXF. I'm happy to leave all of this as it is because this is a projected sketch. I've got all the geometry on there. Click OK. That will give me a screen where I can now export this to locally on my computer in my downloads folder. So it's pulled the name here from the name of the sketch here. I'm happy with that. DXF export side. Click on save, and that's now created a file in my downloads folder with all that geometry on it. So if I go across to Adobe Illustrator now, which I have open here, I'm going to open a new template on the laser cutter upstairs. I want to use the laser cutter upstairs because it's big enough to cut this all in one piece. So the one I'm working on at the moment is the 25-inch one. So that will fit. Go File, New from Template. Now I've copied the templates for the laser cutters onto my computer into this particular New from Template folder. You may have to go to the student shared drive and double click on the large template there, but I've got them copied locally. So I want to open up the large laser cutter, choose New. This gives me a predefined file that's the exact size of the laser cutter upstairs. I'm not interested in any of this writing here, so I'm going to select all that and delete it. And I'm not interested in drawing to the grid lines either, so I'm going to do a control quote marks to turn the grid lines off. And then I want to see the whole screen, so that's a control and the 0 key on my keyboard to zoom to full screen. So now I've got that full screen up there. I can place that DXF sketch that I just created in Fusion. So if I go to the File menu and choose Place, now I need to browse to my Downloads folder where I downloaded that file to. Here it is here. Before I click on Place here, I want to make sure this Show Import Options is ticked, because depending on what the units are in your Adobe Illustrator, this can come in the wrong sizes. So it's best to have this ticked. Then I click Place, and that shows this window. Otherwise, you don't get this window if you don't click that Show Import Options. It's most important that this says this one here is selected, and one here, and millimeters here. Now, by default, this will be in pixels, in points here, and this will be some other number here. So you need to make sure that this reads 1 millimeters and type over this units here. That means it comes into Adobe Illustrator at the correct size. So now that I click OK, that gives me a cursor where it says whereabouts do you want to place this sketch on your artboard. I'm just going to place it up here in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to move it with the coordinates in a second, but I'm going to place it there. I like to put my stuff that I'm going to laser cut 5 millimeters in from the side and 5 millimeters down. So I need to click this top point up here so that I'm talking about the coordinates of the top left corner. And then I triple click here to make sure that's all selected. Type 5 and it just deletes what's there and retypes 5. I press the tab key on my keyboard, takes me down to the next box and takes 5, and then press tab again. Now I know that that's 5 millimeters down and 5 millimeters in, which means it's going to safely cut on the laser cutter. By default, that sketch that comes out of Fusion, it is 0.709 in thickness, and it's currently black. We need to change that to be RGB red, and we need to change its thickness to be 0.1. The easiest way to change that is just keep clicking until it's all selected, and then when you type, it'll delete it away. So that now, if I click off this now, you should see that's a very faint light red line. While I'm here, I may as well also export the top side of this piece. So I'm going to go back into my program here and repeat the process. So I'm going to add a sketch. Before I do that, I'll turn this sketch off so that it's not so busy on my screen. So add a sketch. I want to add a sketch on this top face here. Then I want to project through all the geometry on that face. So P for project. Zoom in here, everything goes red that I'm going to project. Click on that, click OK. That's got all the geometry on that sketch, this new sketch 5 here. I'm going to finish that sketch, and now I'm going to rename that sketch DXF top, DXF export top. Now I've got to save that as a DXF file so I can bring it into Illustrator. So right click on here or 2-finger click, export DXF, leave all the defaults here, units, millimeters, that's all okay. The name from here, again, has come from my sketch name here. It's automatically pre-filled it. If you didn't rename this sketch here, it would say sketch 5 when it came through here. I would thoroughly recommend that you name it to something meaningful. I'm only interested in saving onto my computer. I don't want to save this into the Fusion Cloud Storage. That's why there's no ticks here. That's going into my downloads folder. That's fine. So I can click save here. Now that I've got that DXF file downloaded, I can Alt-Tab back across to my Fusion and I can place that sketch. So File, Place, and now I have my DXF on the top. I have my Show Import Options ticked to confirm. Click Place. I have Scale by 100%, 1 equals 1 millimeter. Okay, now you can see this is coming in vertically, which is not going to work for us, but that's okay. We just bring it in and then we're going to rotate it once we get it in here. So I'm just going to click anywhere in our design and I can choose the rotations over here. You could rotate it by grabbing the handle in this corner and rotating it. That's a bit messy. It's much easier to just click the drop down arrow and say 90 degrees here. Sometimes that will end up meaning that this is completely off your design after you've rotated it. That's not a problem because again, we're going to click the top left hand corner here. We want it to be 5 mils across from the edge, right? And I don't really know how high it is, so I'm just going to use the cursor arrow down here and just drive this up until that's up nice and close, so I'm not being wasteful on my material. While it's still all selected, I'm going to change the thickness and the stroke. So change the stroke to red, change the thickness to 0.1, press enter. If I click away now, everything's light red. Now I'm going to save this into the student shared drive. So File, Save, go into the student shared drive, Technology Faculty. I'm going to save this into the FRC folder and then into my folder. And I'm going to call it Whole Template, Side, and Top. And was this the 25-inch version? I think this was the 25-inch version. 25-inch. I might just alt tab that to check. Yes, it is a 25. 25-inch. Save. And I can choose the defaults in here. Now that I've got that file there, I can now use that file on the laser cutter to laser cut them out of ply or MDF, and I'll be able to place them over the top of the aluminium to scribe a line to work out how long to cut it, and I'll also be able to drill center punch 2 holes at the ends. So I'll place this on top, I'll center punch this hole here, center punch this hole here. I'll drill those 2 holes and then I'll drop an actual 3mm drill in that hole and in that hole to hold this template in place while I then go and center punch all of the rest of these holes, and then we'll take that off and then we'll be able to drill that on the drill press so that we can make our aluminium extrusion. So that's the process for the 25-inch version, exactly the same process for the 27-inch version, but you're just projecting the sketch from the 27. Just keeping in mind that the end distance on the 27, so the 25-inch is 25 plus 0.4 of a mil, whereas the 27-inch version, its length is 27 inches minus 0.4 of a mil. So it's got a slightly different distance between here and here on the end. So you do need to make 2 different versions of this, one for the 27, one for the 25. Once that whole template's been all made and laser cut, then that can go over to the workshop and we can get these pieces made up so that we can start to assemble the robot. And that's all for this video.